Hello, everybody. It's Mrs. Abrams with the next installment of The Adventures of Captain Underpants by Dave Pilkey. When we last left our story, we got to read one of George and Harold's comic books. Today, we're going to find out what that big trouble was that George and Harold got into. Here we go. Chapter 4, Mean Old Mr. Krupp. See that mean old guy up in the window there? That's Mr. Krupp, the principal. Now, Mr. Krupp was the meanest, sourest old principal in the whole history of Jerome Horowitz Elementary School. He hated laughter and singing. He hated the sounds of children playing at recess. In fact, he hated children altogether. And guess which two children Mr. Krupp hated the most? You guessed it, George and Harold. He hated their pranks and their wisecracks. He hated their silly attitudes and their constant giggling, and he especially hated those awful Captain Underpants comic books. I'm going to get those boys one day, Mr. Krupp vowed. One day, very, very, very soon. And the sign on his desk says, "Kneel here." Chapter 5, One Day, Very, Very Soon. Remember when I said that George and Harold's silly streak got them into big trouble? Well, this is the story of how that happened and how some huge pranks and a little blackmail turned their principal into the coolest superhero ever. It was the day of the big football game between the Horowitz Knuckleheads and the Steubenville Stinkbugs. The bleachers were filled with fans. And take a look at the sign. It says, Jerome Horowitz Elementary. See our big football game today. Oh, I'll bet you can guess what's going to happen. The cheerleaders ran onto the field and shook their pom-poms over their heads. A fine black dust drifted out of their pom-poms and settled all around them. "Give me a K," shouted the cheerleaders. "K," repeated the fans. "Give me an N," shouted the cheerleaders. "N," repeated the fans. "Give me an ha, 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 ha-choo," said the cheerleaders. And ha, 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 choo, repeated the fans. The cheerleaders sneezed and sneezed and sneezed some more. They couldn't stop sneezing. "Hey," shouted a fan in the bleachers, "somebody sprinkle black pepper into the cheerleaders' pom-poms." "I wonder who did that?" asked another fan. The cheerleaders stumbled off the field, sneezing and dripping with mucus, as the marching band members took their places. But when the band began to play, steady streams of bubbles began blowing out of their instruments. Bubbles were everywhere. Up and down the field, the marching band slipped and slid, leaving behind a thick trail of bubbly foam. "Hey," shouted a fan in the bleachers, "somebody poured bubble bath into all of the instruments." "I wonder who did that?" asked another fan. Soon, the football teams took the field. The knuckleheads kicked the ball. Up, up, up went the ball. Higher and higher it went. The ball sailed into the clouds and kept right on going until nobody could see it anymore. "Hey," shouted a fan in the bleachers, "somebody filled the game ball with helium. That's what you put in balloons to make the balloons go up in the air." I wonder who did that, asked another fan. I don't know. Do you know? But the missing ball didn't make any difference because at that moment, the knuckleheads were rolling around the field, scratching and itching like crazy. Hey, shouted the coach. Somebody replaced our deep heating muscle rub lotion with Mr. Prankster's extra scratchy itching cream. We wonder who did that, shouted the fans in the bleachers. The whole afternoon went on much the same way, with people shouting everything from, "Hey, somebody put sea monkeys in the lemonade," to, "Hey, somebody glued all the bathroom doors shut." Before long, most of the fans in the bleachers had gotten up and left. The big game had been forfeited. That means they had to automatically lose. And everyone in the entire school was miserable. And now take a look at the sign. Jerome Horowitz Elementary. Boy, our feet smell bad. You don't know who did that, right? Everyone left except for two giggling boys crouching in the shadows beneath the bleachers. "Those were our best pranks yet," laughed Harold. "Yep," chuckled George. "They'll be hard to top, that's for sure." "I just hope we don't get busted for this," said Harold. "Don't worry," said George. "We covered our tracks really well. There's no way we'll get busted." Well, that's the end of today's installment. So come back again and we will continue the story of Captain Underpants. Until then, bye.